How's everybody doing? I think you know, and welcome back to Cities Skylines, East Yorkshire, and the city of Kingston. In today's episode, there's one important thing I need to call out first, which is that I am actually recording this time-lapse after I've already done the live play. And because of that, I'm also 100% sure that I also say this during the live play, but I figured I'd call it out to you up front once again. Overall, this is going to be a relatively short episode, probably around 15 minutes as opposed to the 20 plus we've been averaging recently. And that's for a very good reason. I actually just completed a computer upgrade, going from a AMD Ryzen 7 2700X to a Ryzen 9 5900X. And I think the biggest positive for that is that my rendering times are going to go down. And the new motherboard I had to upgrade to as well lets me run the M.2 drive where I store all of my footage and lets me access it really quickly. So doing my editing and looking at all the footage just goes so much more smoothly now. And I'm hoping this is going to let me bring you more episodes more quickly, although I feel like I keep saying that and I haven't been able to follow through, but been sticking to a nice 2-week schedule recently, and I'm pretty happy with that. And enough about me and my computer, though. Let's talk about the build. So what you're seeing me build first here is the Roundabout that I talked about in the previous episode. Being able to kind of link the city center into the portion we've built in the northwest portion of the city was really important to me, but I had to get the feeling just right. So one of the things you'll notice in particular is that I'm putting a lot of greenery, not only inside of the roundabout itself, but also around the roundabout on basically 3 of the 4 corners that surround the roads connecting. And the reason for that is really just functional. If you have a giant roundabout in your city, one that is probably going to be the most traffic-laden piece of roads in this entire city, you don't want housing, you don't want offices, you don't want commercial, you don't want anything really abutting directly against it. It's going to be noisy, it's going to be full of, car exhaust and bus diesel fumes and things you really don't want to be breathing in. So I've kind of surrounded the area with a lot of greenery, and you'll see me start plopping all of that down in a lot of those, kind of ground level ferns, these guys that you see very frequently. It's a vanilla asset, but really one of the best. And then just a lot of trees and throwing some bollards down. But what I did off camera that I think was maybe the biggest upgrade was all of the hatch marks and intersection marking tools you see that's been done where the roads meet the roundabout. When I had done a previous roundabout, I think that was episode 2 or 3 in the east side of the city, I used more in and out roads and really tried to use the node controller to get the angles just right. But for this, I was actually able to use the node controller to just kind of curve out the sides of the road and let just one road on each corner feed into the roundabout. And it took a lot of playing around. I actually had to finally learn in the intersection marking tool how to use the function of adding rules. And adding the rules in lets you apparently create multiple lines out of one line, which lets me leave gaps and have it really just look correct. And I'm kind of upset that I hadn't played with that or figured that out or learned that in the past, but there's a first time for everything. 1,000 hours in, I am still learning about this game. And that's exactly what I want. I don't really want to ever stop learning. I want to always continue to be getting better. And one aspect of getting better, I think, is not only getting good footage in the can when I'm recording in-game, but doing it quickly and in a way that lets me provide less cuts. So what you'll see coming up pretty soon, and I'm not sure if it's this next cut coming up right about now, but I have 2 sections in this video that are by far the longest cut-free sections of time-lapse I've ever done. So what you're seeing here is just simply sped up. I always speed up everything about 5 times, 500%. And I'm not necessarily cutting and trying to stop you from seeing the places where I'm thinking or I'm not sure about what I'm doing. This was a confident build, and I really love the way it came out. And this aspect of the build right here is one of my favorites. So again, directly around this roundabout, I wanted a lot of greenery, but housing really wouldn't make sense. But one thing that Hull has in real life is some office space. Actually, I think the newspaper in town has its offices right around that roundabout. So I thought a little office space would be good here as well. Really convenient for people to get in and out of the city, and really shouldn't contribute to traffic too much. And now that I have all my settings right, I am able to get the props to kind of sit on top of the buildings, and I kind of layered into buildings and a door asset and some fencing here to create kind of a back patio, a lunch area where the workers who work here would be eating their lunch at and enjoying. And I'm really excited about how this came out. And then you'll see next kind of building the area around this building, getting in some street side commercial on the main road leading north out of the city, and then filling in the rest with a variety of foliage and trees and trying to make it look really cohesive. But I know I go into this a bit in the live play, but of course you've seen me build this pathway across the roundabout. And, you know, I'm generally not the biggest fan of when I see people in other builds do that, particularly when they kind of ring the entire roundabout with a crossing. And this is definitely something that doesn't even exist in real life, but I thought it worked really well here for this build. And that's because of how the game, even with Traffic Manager installed, handles pedestrian crossings. You can ban pedestrian crossings, and for some reason on roundabouts, they will still try sneaking across the cars, and it just makes the traffic horrendous, and it doesn't look good. It doesn't really make sense. So putting this one kind of half-curved, semicircular, half-moon-shaped crossing around the road just made perfect sense, and my lord, are the people using it. I've never seen so many pedestrians using one crossing at once. From the moment that I built it, they took absolutely no hesitation in doing that, and hey, that's fine with me. That's exactly what I wanted, and I'm really happy with the outcome there. So you'll see me continue to add in a lot of foliage around here. I've also built that path kind of cornered here going around the side of the office building there. And I think a lot of that is because I'm trying to not only plan for this build, but I'm trying to plan for builds in the future. The only corner you're really not going to see me work on too much is the large space to the southwest of the roundabout, kind of to the northwest of the train station. And that edge, I'm not really certain what I want to do with it yet, so I haven't tackled it in this build, but we'll absolutely look at it in a future build. So I was able to fill in the corner abutting the city center and the corner abutting what we did last episode, but especially just so I could get good cinematics and so I could get good screenshots for the thumbnail, which of course I forgot to take, and I gotta figure out, gonna have to go back into the game to figure that out, but I need to make sure the northeast corner started to get filled in as well. So what I started doing here is just generally laying the road network out. I'm not 100% sold on how I've done it here, but I do think it came out pretty good, particularly with the one bridge crossing the water. I don't want the AI in the cars to think the best way to get around the city is cut across what will eventually be a residential neighborhood. I still want them to come down, use the roundabout, use the wider roads, and have those be the main routes to travel. So I only have that one small crossing of the river in the middle section here, and you will see a few cars using it later if we ever pan and zoom to that area, but not very many. And then you'll see me just kind of putting little snippets of road here or there. And the point of that is that I don't want this interior section abutting the main road going north out of the city. That road is going to be somewhat commercial once I build it, and it's also going to be very full of traffic. And also having pedestrians and the people that live in the city dealing with that traffic is really not ideal. So by cutting all of these roads off, also lets me build that main road facing commercial without having any bad traffic interactions. And without me kind of putting too many intersections on the main roads, which is probably the worst thing you can do for traffic in this game. So what I'm just doing here, I'm just throwing in a few buildings, a few parking lots, trying to satisfy that green bar and give the city some more residents. I think I get pretty close to 10,000 by the end of this build. I'm not exactly sure where that ends up, but overall, very happy with how this build is coming out. And I'm sorry if the audio gets weird there. Of course, FedEx decided to ring my bell right in the middle of me recording, 10 minutes into a cut, into a take, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to redo it. I very rarely redo my takes unless I absolutely, truly do screw up. But in the end here, you're going to see in this last minute of footage, another office building. And I forget exactly where this asset came from, but it's beautiful because it's wide, but it's not tall and it's not that deep. And it lets me kind of put in some really good trees in front of it. You'll see me put in some benches, some bollards, and I think it really just works good. And it works really well in that area of the city that kind of bends in where the roads go from the bustling roads leading out of the city to the more smaller road feeding into the roundabout. But that's just about it for the time lapse. And I want to thank you all so much as always for listening in today. Stay tuned for the live play. Thank you very much. All right, and we're back here in the live play, and I'm just going to give you a heads up first that I'm actually recording this before I've done any of the editing or the footage or the recording for the time lapse, and that's good news actually, because I am currently in the middle of planning a computer upgrade, so I'm trying to get as much footage in the can as I can before I do that upgrade, just in case I have problems reloading the save or getting my Cities Skylines install working just right. I have everything backed up on the drives, and I'm expecting it to go just fine, but just in case, that's why this episode is a little bit shorter, but I wanted to make sure everyone sees what's going on here. So, as you saw during the build, I've put together this roundabout, which this just ties in the city so well, and I couldn't be any more pleased. I had a night earlier this week when I was recording for the time lapse where I just had that click of creativity, and I kind of want to explain here a little bit what's going on. So when I first built this roundabout, and this roundabout involves a lot of decoration and detail using the intersection marking tool, but one thing the game sometimes does not handle very well is you'll have pedestrians kind of crossing in this area over here and just really obstructing the traffic. And I was kind of looking at the traffic patterns in the game and seeing that pretty much everyone was coming from the city center and in this direction over here towards what we built previously. And once I built this little kind of curb around the roundabout, it really just made sense to throw in this pathway, and you can just see how heavily it is being used. But off camera, I actually also added a small pathway in on the other side of the road, just to take the small amount of people that are coming from the bottom of the city center and over to the bottom of this area. It's not currently heavily used because we haven't filled in any of this yet, and I think this whole giant square is going to be probably an entire episode, and I'm not quite there yet in terms of what I want to do with it, but I was kind of planning ahead and honestly kind of wanted to make the cinematics look good, but just kind of added in a lot of foliage here. I think it really makes sense to do that because you don't want buildings right against what's probably going to be the busiest, most traffic-laden roundabout in the entire city. But I think we talked enough about this during the time-lapse, or at least I hope I will when I record it. But I also wanted to show you a little bit more of the city center because I did a little bit of work here. Definitely not final, but I have filled in this square with just some more of this Georgian-style housing carried over. I tried to fill in this corner over here, and I did quite a bit of work in this area, just following through the tiling pattern and just kind of finishing off the city center. I won't say that the city center is 100% done. I think I still have maybe this one square up here, just abutting the main road. But for the most part now, you can see the city center is completely filled in, which is something that I've been slacking on a little bit. I still got to finish up the convention center or concert hall, whatever we might end up calling it down here. But I think the city center being done, and at least this corner of it being done and flowing into the roundabout, looks really good. On top of having all of these roads temporarily placed in, I still have a lot of ideas for what's going to happen in this area, and hopefully that'll come up in the next couple of episodes. But for now, I am just really thrilled with how this came out. I can sit here and watch the cars go through all day long. I gotta figure out what's going on over here because these cars are not behaving correctly, but I probably just gotta play with some of my settings, some of my mods to get that working correctly. But that's all I really wanted to show you. I know this is a short episode, but there will be longer episodes in the future, and I'm always trying to mix up the episode length to see what you guys like. So thank you for sticking around. Please subscribe to the channel. There's gonna be more of this coming, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Thank you so much. Bye.